After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing.
I've been playing games for so f***ing long, and I've seen and even played my fair share of games that are exceedingly divisive and polarizing for fans and critics. Death Stranding, Kingdom Hearts, Cyberpunk, Danganronpa V3, Skyward Sword, Fortnite, Pokemon X and Y, Pokemon Sun and Moon, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but I don't think I've ever seen a game as polarizing as The Last of Us Part 2. Not only did this game split opinions like Abby split Joel's skull open with a pitching wedge, but it also carved the gaming community in half. This game was covered in controversy before it even f***ing released. The Last of Us Part 1 was, and still is, one of the most beloved stories in video games. Ellie and Joel's journey across America was one of the tightest and most solid video game narratives ever written, ending in a way that people saw as perfect. No reason for a sequel, because what if it was bad and ruined Part 1? All of this was flipped on its head when The Last of Us Part 2 was announced during the 2016 PSX event. The excitement this game was surrounded in was palpable, but also excitement I didn't personally share. While I owned a PS3, I always ignored it in the face of my Xbox 360, obviously. Not to say it wasn't a great console, just one I never used. I was familiar with Naughty Dog as a company as I played Jak and Daxter and also the Uncharted games. But I didn't play or even know anything about The Last of Us until about 2022 when a former friend recommended I play it. And play it I did. I loved this game. I beat it in roughly a week and jumped right into the second game the next week. And even though he is my favorite creator, I even had to avoid the Nakey Jakey video on the series. Before I even jumped into the game, I saw nothing but complete chaos surrounding it. But I had to play it for myself to see what the hell was going on. So I did. And what I discovered was one of the single most misunderstood video games possibly ever. Before I get into The Last of Us Part 2, we should probably review what started this entire thing. What makes The Last of Us so interesting is that the game couldn't be simpler in story and gameplay. Joel and Ellie's odyssey from Boston to Salt Lake City was a classic and uncomplicated story trope with a slight twist. Older person, surrogate child, adventure, and eventual friendship. What this story does differently is based on a fear that creator Neil Druckmann had personally.
I was an actor who had a role in a great story, and Neil was a father that was wrestling with a hypothetical of what do I look like in the event that I lose my daughter?
What do I look like in the event I lose my child? I mean, not the boldest twist, but it gives us a reasonable character for a zombie survival game. We see it all the time in different apocalypse media to the point where it would be a waste of time to give you an example because you probably have one in your mind. What sets this game apart, and honestly what keeps it from just being a standard action survival horror game, is the writing and the performances. Specifically from Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson. Their chemistry is genuinely infectious. They play off of each other so brilliantly in this game that it is nearly impossible not to get wrapped up in their drama. You don't need more than 2 lines of dialogue to tell you who Joel is. From the opening scene, you can just tell he's a loving father just trying to provide a good life for his daughter. And almost immediately, you see that one thing is taken from him against his will. This scene is devastating. And even after playing and seeing this 1,000 times, I still get emotional seeing it. Troy Baker's performance here is on a level we don't see very often from video games. After this, we shift to him 20 years later. He's still not over the loss of his daughter, and he has turned into a lethal smuggler. This immediately makes him a perfect protagonist because killing people as Joel just makes sense. But it also gives Joel the space to have a redemption arc, which is another way to expand on a simple story. Even the gameplay takes what most survival horror games do and boils it down to its basics. It's just enough to keep things engaging, but not complicated enough to deter anyone from wanting to try it. It was, and still is, one of the most accessible games. I mean, most of this game is just moving ladders and pallets. You'll click triangle so many times, it'll end up looking like the door close option on a New York City elevator. The combat and stealth are pretty basic as far as things go, but they feel fluid enough to keep combat arenas engaging and interesting. But because of the simplicity of the gameplay, a lot of people tend to bag on the game, which I get. This game doesn't have the same gameplay depth as a game like Metal Gear 4, but the gameplay isn't the reason you play The Last of Us. You play it because you have become personally attached to Joel and Ellie, and you need to get her to Utah so the Fireflies can make a vaccine and save the planet. The game is just one big escort mission. It's pretty much Resident Evil 4 if Ashley wasn't screaming the entire time, but the difference is Ellie is a pretty competent escort, whereas Ashley could barely tie her shoes if you didn't show her how. At first, Joel is not into this. He genuinely sees Ellie as just cargo and nothing more. He doesn't talk about anything, and when Ellie tries to get Joel to open up, he shuts it down immediately.
That's too small of a grave.
I forgot to leave that stupid robot on his grave. What should I do with it?
Ellie.
What? I want to talk about it.
No.
Why not?
How many times do we need to go over this? Things happen, and we move on.
It's just...
That's enough.
You're right. I'm sorry.
But you watch it and you understand. It's genuinely one of the few games I've played where characters talk and act like actual humans. Where the game really got me was when Joel gets injured, and now the role of protector shifts from Joel to Ellie. Ellie trusts random cannibals, gets captured, kills the captor, and now, when Joel saves her, the connection on screen feels real and earned. All of these little moments between Joel and Ellie add up, and now that they have a connection, the decision to let Ellie live or die is a much more difficult decision to make. Many people might not want Ellie to live. Even Joel says at some point in the game, sacrifice the few to save the many.
Why would they mow down all these people?
You can't let everyone in.
So they killed them?
And dead people don't get infected. You sacrifice the few to save the many.
I remember when I was playing for the first time, and I was like, I don't really know if I agree with this. You kind of have to go through with some suspension of disbelief. Like, is it possible to make a vaccine for a fungal infection? F if I know, dude. I'm not a f***ing doctor. And apparently neither was the Firefly operating on Ellie, but I don't know, and I really don't care. What I do care about, though, is what happens after Joel brutally executes Firefly after Firefly. The fact that he lied to Ellie about the situation. Look at her f***ing face. She knows this is bullshit. Her bullshit detector, especially for Joel, is quite tuned. But she accepts the lie, because what other choice does she have? She even said it herself. Everyone she's ever loved or cared for has died or left her.
Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Henry, Sam, Marlene, Tess, Riley, and even Joel tried to pawn her off on Tommy. Suffice it to say, this is how you set up a sequel. If you go through any top 10 video game endings list, this game will probably be on that list. But I don't think anyone was prepared for the sequel to be announced. Now the question is, how long is Ellie going to accept this lie presented to her? But also, who did Joel piss off during all of this? I'm gonna go ahead and give you a quick list of games, and I want you to just tell me what they all have in common. Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, Hotline Miami 2, Wrong Number, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Justice for All, Animal Crossing Wild World, and Leisure Suit Larry 2 goes looking for love in several wrong places. I'll go all Kaname Date for you, and I'll clue you in. These games are all sequels, and they all have subtitles. This isn't always the case for sequels, obviously. I, and probably all of you, could think of 1,000 examples of sequels with no subtitles. But there is a deliberate choice and idea when you very specifically title your game The Last of Us Part 2. That Part 2 means something, and it was very intentionally done by Neil Druckmann.
We're doubling down on those fears and not calling it The Last of Us some subtitle. It's The Last of Us Part 2 to say it's all one story.
This clearly shows that they intended for this game to be a direct continuation of the first story. Plenty of fans had ideas of what a sequel to The Last of Us would look like. I don't think they expected Joel to go to the back nines with a muscle girl, or I guess they did because the plot leaked.
We must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
This is when every gamer decided that this game was horse because Joel dies and Abby is trans, which is untrue and stupid. The vitriol surrounding this plot before it even released was f***ing ridiculous. Typically, I don't like going into a game deciding if I like it or not before I even play the f***ing thing, but holy shit. The internet had this game decided, apparently. What they didn't realize was that the story was more nuanced and interesting than they gave that leaked plot credit for. A lot of that, of course, is due to the amazing performances of all the characters, specifically Ashley Johnson and Laura Bailey. But I think this game is written pretty nicely. I see the term revenge narrative thrown around regarding this game, and while it is a story about revenge, I think it's more of a story about what happens when grief becomes your identity. You can see this from the get-go when Joel tells Tommy the truth about what happened in Salt Lake City with the Fireflies. He sounds broken. He sounds like he knows what he did was selfish. He knows what he did was wrong.
And she believed you?
I didn't say otherwise.
But Ellie provided him a new lease on life, and he was willing to slaughter Firefly after Firefly to protect that lease. The grief comes from the fact that Ellie knows the truth. Ellie knows that Joel stopped the surgery, and to her, her life didn't mean anything because of it. Joel repeatedly tries to talk to Ellie and reconnect with her, but she shuts it down, which should sound just slightly familiar. And because of all of this, when Joel gets bonked, she realizes the little time she had left with Joel was wasted. But as the player, we don't know this. Frankly, we don't know anything at all. We see Joel save a random girl we met 20 minutes ago, and now she kills him? Ellie's reaction to this moment is the same reaction a lot of players probably had, including me. I was synced right the f*** up with Ellie. I was ready to travel to Timbuktu to kill this mother. Killing Joel this early lights a fire in the player, and they will probably stop at nothing to destroy everyone in their path to get to this Abby character, even though we have no f***ing idea why she even did it. This starts as a revenge mission for Ellie, but after Tommy leaves to go get Abby himself, it turns into a rescue Tommy mission.
Just, do me a favor and bring my dumbass husband home in one piece, please.
But in reality, it's an excuse for Ellie to kill Abby. Much like Joel's decision to save Ellie in the first game, a lot of players may not agree with Ellie's dangerous and nearly suicidal mission to kill Abby because it's putting characters like Dina and Tommy in danger. But because your main goal is supposed to be rescue Tommy, players can easily rationalize that, okay, we save Tommy and then we go find Abby and rinse this mother. So off Dina and Ellie go, trekking to Seattle and murdering dozens and dozens of wolves while trying to track down certain wolves to get information on where Abby is. Up until Ellie and Dina get to the theater, you're pretty much just slaughtering wolf after wolf along with the occasional infected. Because the combat is so fun and satisfying, I really didn't think too much of it. It's not until Ellie finds Nora and tortures the information out of her. After this, she finds Mel and Owen and kills them both. But it's revealed that Mel was pregnant. And if Ellie wasn't traumatized before, she sure is now. At this point, this mission has become depraved enough, not to mention Dina's newly revealed pregnancy, the fact that Jesse followed them, and then finding Tommy. I thought that Ellie would just give up and head back to Jackson. This, of course, was the plan until Abby finds them, kills Jesse, and has a gun to Tommy and Ellie. Now we turn back the clocks and play from what would have been Ellie's first day in Seattle and take a look at this from Abby's perspective. What we learn from this is Abby is the WLF's most lethal killer of the Seraphites, or Scars, the other group they're feuding with for control of Seattle. At first, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with this. I was still mad at Abby for what she did to Joel, and even angrier for killing Jesse and possibly killing Tommy, so playing as her was really difficult for me. But after a little bit, I started to get really invested in her drama. The moment I started to get the most invested was when Abby gets captured by the Scars and decides to save these two kids, Yara and Lev. At first, it seems like she's doing this as an act of redemption for brutalizing Joel. This at first is true until she decides to go back and save Yara from dying from compartment syndrome. She goes through so much with Lev just to save Yara that it felt like she actually had a change of heart. She and Lev actually start to connect during this trek. We learn more about Abby's vertigo. We learn why Lev was outcast from the Scars. We fight this giant infected in a basement. Abby even helps Yara and Lev get out of the Seraphite and Wolf war zone. And all of this should feel familiar because it's nearly the same recipe we got from Ellie and Joel in part 1. But what Joel got out of it was a newfound lease on life. When Abby returns to the aquarium, she finds her friends Owen and Mel dead. This is when I really started to feel bad. In my eyes, I really didn't hate these people anymore. In fact, I started to connect with them a lot. And now I understood Abby's emotions in the theater moment. Abby storms into the theater, boiling with rage and heartbreak. She doesn't give a who Ellie is anymore. Whatever mercy she found herself after everything she went through with Lev is gone, replaced with the overwhelming grief of seeing her friends and family dead on the floor. And in that moment, the cycle is complete. Ellie became Abby. The line between them snapped. And so begins one of the most uncomfortable, gripping narrative turns I've ever seen in a video game. And the most f***ed up part is, I didn't really want either of them to die. This isn't some heroic f***ing fight to watch. This is two broken people trying to rationalize their trauma, their rage, their grief. In this moment, I'm not rooting for this fight, but I'm enduring it because these are simply the consequences of my actions. I wanted revenge, and I f***ing got it. And it feels dreadful. This fight ends in a way I didn't expect. If I were Abby, I would kill pregnant Dina to avenge pregnant Mel. But thanks to Lev's idea of mercy, because it sure as shit wasn't gonna be Ellie in that moment, Abby finally breaks the vicious cycle they were both locked in. This entire situation yielded 0 winners. Only losers. The most ironic thing about this is that the Reddit villain Abby is the one who shows mercy in the end. Then we turn the clocks forward in time. Despite Ellie's vengeful quest to avenge Joel, she gets a happy ending. She lives peacefully on a farm with Dina and their baby JJ. You would think the entire Seattle situation has left her mind, as she can now move on and break that cycle with her newfound family and life. Unfortunately for her, Seattle looms over her head with a swift helping of PTSD regarding Joel's death. It's a sickening twist of fate where Ellie should have everything she's ever wanted, but just can't escape what she's done. She constantly risked her friends and her family's lives to try to cope with the death of Joel. So along comes Tommy, a broken and beaten man after Seattle, still desperate to avenge Joel. He and Maria have since divorced, the only person trying to keep him on a path of moving on. He knows that Ellie wants revenge, but I don't even fully think this is true. I think at this point, Ellie is just addicted to the pursuit because it's just become her identity. Now Ellie is faced with a choice: leave the farm or finish the mission. Everyone was probably screaming at their monitors, as was I, telling Ellie to just give up on Abby. But Ellie, like us humans, is deeply flawed. She's not gonna make the right decision because we don't always make the right decisions. Ellie travels to Santa Barbara and finds Lev and Abby, enslaved by the Rattlers. She saves them, which at first seems quite altruistic, but we all know what happens. Ellie knows she can't let them go, so she threatens Lev, and now Abby's hand is forced. This boss fight is intense and wildly dramatic. Abby chomps Ellie's fingers, and despite this, Ellie gains the upper hand. She starts to drown Abby in the water, and this seems like the end. But we get a flashback to BJ, or Before Joel. Probably could have thought of a better acronym for that. In the flashback, Joel and Ellie reconcile with what happened. Joel is finally honest with Ellie for the first time since the Firefly incident, and Ellie is finally ready to move on and reconnect with him. To me, this feels very similar to the end of Breaking Bad, where you can physically see the weight being lifted off of Skylar White's shoulder when Walt finally tells the truth. That's when Ellie stops. That's when The Last of Us 2 fully reveals what it always was. A story not about revenge, but the cost of it. A story about trying to find yourself in the wake of your own destruction. She returns to the farm and can't play Joel's guitar, the single remnant of him she had left. Dina and JJ are gone too, and all of this could seem like a bad ending. But I disagree. This is an incredibly honest ending, and one that shows that Ellie still has something left of her to save. Ellie may not have a long and clear redemption like Arthur Morgan in Red Dead 2, but sometimes walking away is the redemption. Because plot is such an intrinsic aspect of most Naughty Dog titles, I see many people fully focus on that and kinda dismiss the gameplay. But I think this game really cranked it up a notch by trying to combine solid and satisfying gameplay with a well thought out story. Additionally, the graphics and visual fidelity add to this, creating a more realistic and affecting experience than if it looked worse or different. I've seen this game be described as hide and seek combat or peekaboo combat, most notably by the video game Dunkster.
Last of Us is gross and horrific. It is a barrage of violence and screaming and cruelty, but it's also pretty damn fun. Naughty Dog continues to build upon their hide-and-seek style of combat.
And honestly, he's right on the money here. This game gently expands on the first game's mechanics by letting you go prone in tall grass, jump, set traps, and much more. Abby and Ellie each have different gameplay mechanics, which is great because it helps differentiate the gameplay between the two, and even freshens up gameplay when the game rewinds to Seattle Day 1. The combat is not only satisfying to play, but also very gritty and realistic. Enemies are shredded from a shotgun. Melee weapons feel weighty and hit hard. Arrows and bullets have drop on them. Traps will disapparate enemies, and you can Dark Souls dodge now. Lots of this is pretty simple. A lot of games like Metal Gear, Red Dead, and Dark Souls do all of these and probably a hell of a lot better. But what this game does differently is how it implements these systems and weaponizes them tactically in service of the world and the characters. The AI really aids in this specifically. The AI in Last of Us Part 2 is incredibly advanced. Enemies will flank you, call out to each other, beg for their lives, or even panic when they find a dead body. The Scars will call and respond with each other via their trademark whistling, which each has a distinct meaning behind it. Shout out to this guy for decoding all of that. You don't necessarily feel like a superhero, but each combat encounter feels earned when you finish it, and there's very little disconnect between what you see and what you do. Even something as simple as healing, which is normally a quick action that takes no time at all, requires time, resources, and space in your inventory, making every choice in combat cost and mean something. Something I don't see mentioned very often is melee combat, which I think is where this game really stepped things up from the first. Specifically from Abby, she will straight up box a f***ing clicker like she's Patty Pimblett. Her weapons are weightier, bulkier, she can craft pipe bombs and use crossbows. Ellie, by comparison, feels more scrappy, where she can set trip bombs, smoke bombs, silencers for pistols, and leans more into a stealth and speed style of combat. This really helps Ellie and Abby feel like separate characters, rather than just being a simple reskin of each other. The game's animations, while being very realistic, respond to the player. Each gun has a different reload animation. You can get detailed views of weapons when upgrading, and upgrades even have visual progress. The world feels bigger and more expansive as well. Some combat arenas are enormous and sprawling, which gives you extra options to tackle the gameplay in whatever way seems most satisfying to you. I wouldn't consider it open world, but it's big enough to let you try different things. To help with all of this, though, is the game's graphics. I have been on record before stating that I don't give the furry crack of a rat's behind about graphics or fidelity, and honestly, I think that's kind of what's sending games down a slippery path recently. The game is stunning. Water shimmers on the ground when exposed to light. Facial animations are unreasonably realistic, and grass sways in the wind. I like the visual motif of nature finally making its return to the world after being so unbelievably desolate in the first game. I'm pretty sure this is a realistic depiction of Seattle too, but I honestly don't even know because I haven't been there in 20 years, but Nick, is this accurate?
I'm sorry, what?
On the opposite end, they do a great job of making even dark and claustrophobic areas look visually pleasing. You can see each spore in the air, your flashlight will peer down hallways, illuminating infected and broken interiors, and this all helps with environmental storytelling and mood building. Not only do I think that this is possibly the best looking game on the PS4, but I have yet to see a game fully exceed The Last of Us Part 2 on this front. This creates a very satisfying dialogue with the gameplay as well, allowing for battle animations to feel much smoother than before. It doesn't feel choreographed, it feels more frantic. All of this is in service of the story, which works in tandem with the visuals to enhance the game's violent themes, making the game feel much more uncomfortable, but satisfying to play at the same time. Much more importantly though, it helped to immerse me in the world. It helped me feel the brutality, with the graphics helping me feel like I'm experiencing a story and not just simply playing a game. Because of all of this, I still think about this game to this day. Whether it's the newly made show adaptation, the dozens of videos and posts about this game, or the Metacritic review bombing that persists to this day because we're gonna be a dad,
Hey, yo, what the
this game has yet to leave my brain. Like I stated in the intro, I've seen controversy, I've seen backlash, and I've seen intense polarization of several games. But at the very least, whether you like this game or not, you cannot deny the memorability of it. I think the fact that people will still get into crazy big arguments over it just shows that it created a conversation at the very least. I'm not trying to claim that this game or the first is a perfect game with no flaws, because this game has them. I mean, look at this. I get why people don't like this game. I get why people may not connect with the story. And I get why people may think the gameplay may just be watered down. I understand why people shut the game off when Joel got beaten, or even at the theater sequence. This game doesn't want to be easy emotionally or thematically, and all of these are perfectly valid reasons to not like The Last of Us Part 2. But what isn't a valid reason is hating this game because Ellie is a f***ing lesbian, or because Lev is trans, or because you don't want to have sex with Abby. But at the very least, you can understand that this game isn't gonna hold your hand. Characters are gonna make stupid decisions, and it's gotta be up to you to be an adult and try to emotionally connect to the game, because the game is trying to treat its audience like grown-ups, because that's what we are. This game is asking a lot. It's asking you to deal with trauma, guilt, and grief, with some compassion and humanity. And if you can deal with all of these, you will get to the other side of this game and realize this is probably one of the most powerful video games ever made.